Hello and welcome to this historical introduction to the witch wound. I think it's important to learn about the historical background of the witch hunts so that we can understand more adequately why our inner wounded witch behaves the way that they do in order to protect us from harm. This isn't going to be an easy listen, so please be gentle with yourselves as we go. The witch wound is a deep ancestral trauma rooted in the collective memory of the witch hunts, also known as the Burning Times. The Burning Times refers to the period of the witch hunts and trials that swept through Europe and later into America, peaking between the 15th and 17th centuries. This period saw the systematic persecution of individuals, primarily women, accused of witchcraft. It is estimated that approximately 50,000 people were killed for witchcraft during this time, with roughly double that being accused, though the actual figures may be much higher. The majority of those accused, approximately 80%, were women, and they were subjected to brutal interrogations and often executed, usually by burning or hanging. This dark chapter in history was fueled by a mix of religious, political, and cultural forces deeply rooted in misogyny, the rise of patriarchal power, and emerging economic systems. It's important to note that anyone who would have been perceived as other would have been vulnerable to accusations, so this would have included the queer community and other marginalised groups. So although it's important that we speak of women mostly in this context, it's also essential to mention other groups, even if they didn't have the terminology that we do in modern times today. Women were disproportionately targeted during the witch trials. The societal view of women at the time was one of inferiority. Women were considered more susceptible to sin, temptation, and evil. Patriarchal attitudes deemed women's bodies and their natural cycles as dangerous or impure, contributing to their association with witchcraft. Midwives, healers, and women who lived outside of societal norms were especially vulnerable, as their knowledge and independence threatened male-dominated religious and political structures. Witchcraft accusations often served as a tool to suppress women's power, autonomy, and influence. Women who were outspoken, independent, or lived outside of typical family structures were frequently accused, as they defied the strict social roles set for them by patriarchal society. The church played a significant role in fueling the hysteria around witchcraft. In 1487, Heinrich Kramer, a Catholic clergyman, published the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches, a treatise that became a foundational text in the witch hunts. The Malleus Maleficarum framed witchcraft as heresy, linking it to the women's supposed inherent weakness and sinfulness. It provided detailed guidelines for identifying, interrogating, and prosecuting witches, often endorsing brutal torture and manipulation to elicit confessions. Through torture, these people would then be forced to accuse others, which then continued the cycle. Communities were torn apart as suspicion and paranoia turned neighbours against neighbours. The Malleus Maleficarum was highly misogynistic, claiming that women were more likely to engage in witchcraft due to their carnal nature and susceptibility to Satan's influence. It perpetuated the idea that women's sexuality and independence were dangerous, fueling fear and suspicion towards women, especially those who stepped outside traditional gender roles. The witch hunts also coincided with significant social and economic changes in Europe. The rise of capitalism brought shifts in land ownership, wealth, and social structures. Many historians link the witch hunts to the disruption caused by these changes, as women's roles as healers, midwives, and caretakers were increasingly marginalised by the growing medical and economic systems dominated by men. Women who held communal knowledge and skills were now seen as a threat to emerging capitalist structures, where control and power were shifting into the hands of a male-dominated elite. Patriarchy and economic interests intertwined during this period as landowners, religious authorities, and political leaders sought to consolidate power. Witch trials became a tool to not only control women, but also to eliminate threats to the evolving capitalist order. Accusations of witchcraft were often levelled at women who were widows, single, or in possession of property, allowing powerful men to seize land and wealth, including men within their family. The hysteria spread to North America, most notably during the Salem witch trials of 1692. In Salem, Massachusetts, a series of accusations led to trials and executions, again with women as the primary targets. The same themes of misogyny, fear of the other, and the desire for control played out there too, reflecting how deeply ingrained these fears and social hierarchies had become. The witch hunts of the Burning Times were more than just isolated acts of superstition. They were manifestations of deep-seated fears about women, power, and social change. The Malleus Maleficarum and the institutionalized misogyny of the Church, coupled with the shifting economic and political landscapes of Europe, created the perfect storm for the persecution of women. These trials were not only about religious purity, but were also tools of oppression used to maintain control over women, land, and power within a patriarchal and capitalist framework. These events left a profound imprint on the collective psyche, especially for women and those connected to spiritual practices. The witch wound manifests as fear of visibility, rejection, or persecution for expressing one's intuitive, healing, or magical gifts. Today, healing the witch wound involves reclaiming personal power, reconnecting with ancestral wisdom, and breaking free from the fear of being seen as too much or too different. By confronting this wound, people can reclaim the spiritual and intuitive practice that were once demonized. And if you are interested in healing this wound, you can join my 6-week Healing the Witch Wound course. It's all based online and we have intakes throughout the year. You can also start with the mini course. It's email based and it's sent to you once a day for 5 days. Let's get started. Thank you for listening, for tuning in, and for taking an interest in this deep sacred work. You can begin to heal. For now, stay curious, stay powerful.